All right, welcome everyone. If you're a focused learner looking to truly grasp the historical foundation of one of the most transformative lives in human history, you are in exactly the right place. In this step-by-step explainer, we're traveling back in time, setting the stage in 7th century Arabia to uncover the early life of Prophet Muhammad. We're going to meticulously unpack the historical conditions, the personal trials, and the world that uniquely shaped his revolutionary mission.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've organized our study guide into 6 chronological chapters: birth and desert life, childhood loss and resilience, the age of ignorance, the trustworthy merchant, the first revelation, and finally, the first believers.
Chapter 1. Birth and Desert Life. 571 CE, the arrival in Mecca.
So the historical record places his birth on a Monday in the year 571 CE. He's born in the bustling trade city of Mecca to his mother Amina. But he was actually born an orphan. His father, Abdullah, had passed away before he was even born. His grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib, who was the political leader of Mecca at the time, proudly named him Muhammad, which means the praised one. Now, in the customs of the time, babies were almost immediately sent away from the city. At just 1 week old, he was entrusted to a wet nurse named Halima from the Banu Sa'd tribe. She was desperate because of a terrible famine in her land, and because Muhammad was an orphan with a deceased father to pay her, other wet nurses had actually passed him over. But Halima took him in, and he stayed with her until he was 4 years old.
Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would a mother send her newborn away? Well, Mecca was incredibly tough. It had a notoriously harsh, unforgiving climate for infants. It was crowded, highly political, and deeply rigid in its societal norms. But out with the desert tribes, like the Banu Sa'd, it was a totally different world. It offered open plains and healthy fresh air, giving kids the freedom to really build physical and mental strength. And maybe even more importantly, the desert tribes spoke the absolute purest, most eloquent forms of the Arabic language, which was a massive asset in a society that prized oral communication above all else. Historically, we see that his time with Halima and her husband not only gifted him superior language skills, but it also reportedly brought immense barakah, or blessings, to their previously drought-stricken land.
Chapter 2. Childhood loss and resilience, building an unshakable foundation.
While his physical foundation was built out in the desert, his emotional and spiritual foundation was forged through, frankly, immense tragedy. Let's trace these milestones. At age 6, after a poignant visit to his father's grave, his devoted mother Amina falls gravely ill and passes away. He's left in the care of his loyal caretaker, Ayman. Care then transfers to his doting grandfather, who loved him so deeply, he gave him a special seat at the Kaaba where literally no one else was allowed to sit. But just 2 years later, when Muhammad is 8, his grandfather also passes away. Finally, he's taken in by his loving uncle, Abu Talib. By age 12, his bond with his uncle was so strong and he was so terrified of facing yet another separation that he begged to join him on a grueling trade caravan all the way to Damascus.
I want you to hear this incredibly powerful quote from Amina's deathbed. "Every living being dies, every new thing becomes old, and all who age will eventually die, but my name will be remembered forever, for I gave birth to a pure and righteous child." These profound sequential losses, his father, his mother, his grandfather, they basically stripped away all earthly safety nets. From an analytical perspective, these extreme hardships forced him to rely solely on God, systematically preparing him for the immense burdens of leadership where he'd eventually have to stand entirely alone.
Chapter 3. The Age of Ignorance, the dark societal backdrop of pre-Islamic Arabia.
To truly understand the impact of his life, we have to look at the world he stepped into. Mecca was a strategic, bustling trade hub, safe from the surrounding empires, making it a perfect launchpad for a new message. But socially, it was steeped in extreme darkness. The historical terminology for this period is Jahiliyyah, defined as the Age of Ignorance. Now, while the Arabs claimed the Prophet Ibrahim, or Abraham, as their ancestor and deeply respected the Kaaba he built, they had completely departed from his monotheistic teachings. They had actually filled Abraham's sacred house with 360 idols, including big ones named Lot, Manat, Uzza, and Hubal.
But guys, the ignorance went way beyond just idol worship. This was a terrifyingly brutal society. Female infanticide was openly practiced. Newborn daughters were literally buried alive by their own fathers due to cultural shame or fear of poverty. There were zero rights for the vulnerable. If a husband died, widows and orphan children were immediately stripped of their inheritance and treated like property. On top of that, the region was paralyzed by endless blood feuds, these violent, generation-spanning tribal wars with absolutely no justice.
It was a society ruled by gambling, theft, and the oppression of the weak. Human life just had virtually no worth.
Which leads us to a critical question to consider as we go through this explainer. How did these devastating social conditions perfectly set the stage for a revolutionary message? Think about it. The extreme darkness, cruelty, and total lack of justice during Jahiliyyah made the upcoming light of the Quran and its rigorous message of justice and human dignity absolutely necessary.
Chapter 4. The Trustworthy Merchant. Adulthood and earning the title, Al-Amin.
As Muhammad entered adulthood, what's really fascinating is how he managed to completely avoid the moral decay of Mecca. He remained a Hanif, a monotheist who never worshipped idols or fell into the sinful partying of his peers. He actually worked as a humble shepherd out in the hills to help support his impoverished uncle Abu Talib. And in this incredibly corrupt world, he became universally known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. People literally entrusted him with their life savings. His stellar reputation caught the attention of Khadija, who was a wealthy, highly respected merchant. She hired him to lead her trade caravan to Damascus, and his flawless honesty on that trip deeply impressed her. So much so that the 40-year-old Khadija sent a marriage proposal to the 25-year-old Muhammad. He accepted, forming a profoundly supportive partnership.
And here is a perfect example of his reputation in action. When he was 35, the Kaaba was being rebuilt, and a massive, violent dispute broke out over which tribe would get the ultimate honor of placing the sacred black stone. A blood feud was imminent. When they asked him to judge the matter, his solution was brilliant. He places the stone in the center of a cloth, has one representative from each rival tribe grab a corner to lift it together, and then he personally places the stone into the wall. Boom. His ingenuity prevented a war and completely cemented his authority as a universally trusted peacemaker.
Chapter 5. The First Revelation. The Light Pierces the Darkness.
Despite his personal success, his inner world was in turmoil. As he approached his late 30s, the suffocating immorality of Makkah drove him to retreat to the cave of Hira on Mount Nur, just seeking silence and connection with his creator. And now, we've reached the absolute climax of our historical narrative. In the year 610 CE, when he's 40 years old, during the month of Ramadan, his solitude is broken on the night of power. The angel Gabriel, suddenly appears in the cave, physically embracing him with immense force, commanding him to read. The very next day, Jibril returns to teach him wudu, the ritual ablution, and salah, the structured prayer, to spiritually fortify him.
Here are those foundational words delivered by the angel Jibril. Read in the name of your Lord who created, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. Here's the wild part. Muhammad could neither read nor write. Yet, with these exact words, he was tasked with a monumental mission, pulling humanity out of the darkness of ignorance by interpreting the book of the universe.
Naturally, he's absolutely terrified. He rushes down the mountain to Khadija, pleading, "Cover me, cover me!" She immediately becomes his ultimate safe haven. She comforts him with this exact quote, "By Allah, Allah will never cause you harm. You keep good relations with your family. You help the poor and treat your guests generously." She then takes him straight to her cousin, a Christian scholar named Waraka, who listens to the whole story and confirms the truth. He had been visited by the same angel that came to Moses. He was the prophet of his nation.
Chapter 6. The First Believers. The Secret Dawning of Islam.
Following the revelation, the message started out in complete secrecy, quietly separating the people of Mecca into two distinct camps. Let's look at the very first individuals brave enough to embrace this. Khadija was, without question, the very first believer and his ultimate support system. His 10-year-old cousin Ali, who observed them praying, became the first child to embrace Islam. And then there was Abu Bakr, a respected merchant and close friend. He believed without a single moment of hesitation. Abu Bakr immediately took action, spreading the message to other prominent Meccan figures, while women from the Prophet's family dedicated themselves to sharing this spiritual cure as well.
But stepping into the light meant going up against an entire city that was heavily invested in the dark. The early converts faced looming, horrific challenges. We're talking open hostility from powerful Quraysh leaders like Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. They faced threats of extreme physical torture, devastating social and economic boycotts designed to literally starve them out, and, as the scholar Waraka had heartbreakingly prophesied, the eventual, violent expulsion of the Prophet from his beloved homeland. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought for this explainer. Look at the immense, careful preparation of his early life, the physical conditioning of the desert, the emotional resilience forged through profound grief, the reputation of flawless trustworthiness. It was all designed for exactly what was to come. Ask yourself, if you were asked to stand completely alone against the dark, violent customs of an entire society, would you have the unbreakable resilience to hold on to the truth? The brutal trials that follow in the Sirah are a testament to that very resilience. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and stay focused.